Shalom, brothers and sisters. Grace, mercy, and peace be unto you from Yahuwah the Father and Yahusha our Mashiach, his voice. Hear, O Yasharal, Yahuwah our mighty one is one Yahuwah. This is Brother David coming to you again to ask the question, are there different species of humans on this planet? This is part 9, the giants. Are you familiar with this tapestry? This is history. It's not fiction. It's history. It's forbidden history. Especially for people of color. They're not supposed to know this. White supremacy makes the Europeans on top, and they put everyone else on the bottom. But if you go back in history, you'll find out that there was a group of people, they were called the Moors, who ruled Europe for 700 to 800 years. Then the people of Europe, the French, English, the Gauls, the Germans, and the wild men of Europe came against the Moors to take back their land. Look who's in the castle. The Moors, right? Look in the window, the king and the queen. Is that what you call black? I believe so. You see how so many people identify as black, but if you don't look like that, you're not black, right? Look at the other color. Brown. What do we call it? Ruddy. In every depiction in Egypt, the Incas, now here we have it in Europe, the people of color, the people that came from Africa had two hues, the burnt face and the ruddy. This is a fact. Anything lighter skin than that, we call them those light red bones and stuff like that. Anything lighter has an admixture. How do we know this? DNA evidence has proven it. Now the Moors were in the castles. They had great technology. Look what they had. Bows and arrows. Look what else they had. Armor. Do you see the armor? You see on his arms the blue and the gray? And all of them had on armor. Did you know that the Moors, which came from Africa, I guess you know that already, were skilled in metalworking? They were geniuses when it came to that. So they fully armored their body. Look at their feet, even their feet. Armor. Looks like the people who are in the towers, the people who are in the castle, they look like they're in distress. Why are they in distress? Who is the king pointing at? He's looking at the wild men of Europe as they are attacking. Let's go to the left and look at the wild men of Europe. Remember, a picture speaks 1,000 words. What is their weapons? Clubs and rocks. How do you come up against a people with technology like the Moors? They had armor, they had bows and arrows, they had shields, they had swords, but the people who are the wild men of Europe had clubs and rocks. What was their power then? They were giants. Do you see their bodies? That is not armor. That is not clothes. They were hairy. They were wild and they were hairy. Can we connect them to any people? We have DNA evidence that shows that they evolved from what? Monkeys. Even today, you can tell some Europeans to take off their shirt. What you're going to see? Hair all over their body. Yes. Look at the feet. Look, come down to the first ones, the first giants that are in the front. Look at their feet. They have claws on their feet. What is that all about? They have white skin. All of them are depicted with this golden hair. You know, they call it blonde today. You know what the Bible calls it? A yellow hair. That if you saw on your black skin a yellow hair with a white patch, you were to be put outside the camp because you were what? Unclean. But their whole body is like that. This picture is in Germany, brothers and sisters. So the Germanic people descend from who? These giants. A picture speaks 1,000 words. What is this? Missing history. Is it out there for us to discover? Yes. You just have to seek it out. Who's seeking it out? Especially Europeans, they're not going to seek this out. Because they are enjoying the fruits of white supremacy. You can say anything you want to, but you are enjoying the fruits of white supremacy. It gives you power. You don't have to worry about things when you're riding down the streets or, you go for a job. You don't have to worry about the things we have to worry about, being turned down just because of our skin color. Your skin color gives you privilege. But in this picture, you see that the people who were privileged were the blackamoors. Let's look at some commentary. Blackamoors as 14th century Germany Strasbourgs. What does that mean? They were the ruling class. This interesting 14th century tapestry captures the events of European migration period when the Gauls, the Celts, and blackamoors of Europe, a single African people, lost the effort in defending their villages, towns, and way of life in Italy, Spain, England, France, and Germany to the Italic, Franco-German, and Slavic peoples who replaced them. You see what the Europeans or the other humans always do? Everything has to do with replace, replace, replaced. Who replaced them and at the time attacked with rocks and clubs. It is a surprise to see that it was the Moors. Why is it such a surprise? Notice their headbands, who were portrayed as the first Strasbourgs and bore the royal name, see Plate 15. Forbidden History. Plate 15 to your right, the wild men in Moor's tapestry, of which part is shown, is typical of other 14th and 15th century allegory pieces woven into South Germany. Do you know why they created all these pieces? Because the Europeans had defeated the Moors and took back their castles, so they were celebrating. Who knew that maybe hundreds and hundreds of years later, the Israelites will awaken from their slumber and will pull up this art and be able to decipher it. The armorials in the lower border are those of Zorn von Bulak or Zorn von Plabschein and Blumel or Blumlein, which were all powerful Strasbourg families at the time. Isn't this amazing? The ruling class in Germany were the Moors. Do you know the Queen of England comes from Germanic stock? Yes. She traces her lineage back to the Moors, even though it's not said. We are truly waking up. Look in the castle. Look at the king and the queen. We're talking black. But you know, in this painting, they see that they have one hand is brown. Look at the queen. She has this long, flowing, sheepish looking wig on her head. It brings something to mind, doesn't it? In Europe, when you go to their courts of law, the judges, and sometimes even the prosecutors and your criminal defense attorneys, they have on this long, white, sheepish looking wig. Now remember, they are the origin. The Moors, that is, are the origin of civilization in Europe. They brought the arts, they brought the sciences, they brought music. They taught the people how to bathe. They built great structures, castles, cathedrals. They were the ruling class. So it's obvious that they must have taken this visual that they got from the blackamoors and used that in their courts of law. Did you know that the Moors were big on law, brothers and sisters? They brought law and order to Europe. This depiction is in Spain. We just came from Germany. This one is in Spain. Look at the king on the flag. Look at the queen in the castle pointing. She's saying, "The enemy, they are approaching." And they sent out their knights. This is where all of your knights came from, brothers and sisters. They didn't come from the Europeans. They learned metalworking and armor from who? These blackamoors. Forbidden history. Here's another depiction where the king is in war with another king from Europe, and the other king, the white king, killed the black king. See, they were taking back their lands in the end of the 14th and the 15th century, and they were expelling the blackamoors from Europe. Heathen, those who dwell in heath, those who dwell in the woods and the forests. A picture speaks 1,000 words. Did not Enoch describe this person? The book of Enoch, that is. Methuselah described him. Lamech described him. He says, their skin is white as snow, yet red as a rose, eyes glorious, hair long and white. Seems to me that that his son looked more like a descendant of those who came from the fallen ones. So we knew what the fallen one's seed looked like from the book of Enoch. We learned that it's a curse to have this white skin because of what happened with Miriam. We learned that it's unclean to have a white patch in your skin with a blonde hair coming out of it, that was the beginning of what we call today Villalago, which is a curse to black people. Yes. We have so much evidence now. How did we get all of this evidence, Brother David? DNA. We used the scripture. We looked at what the scripture said. Then we came into modern times and looked at DNA evidence to see whether the scripture skipped any beats. It did not. It told you that there were different species of humans on this planet. When the blackamoors came into Europe, they encountered this people. When the Romans came into Europe, or when they went further up into Europe, into the Germanic lands, into Britannia, they encountered these people, those who dwelt in heaths. The Romans documented it also. They were afraid of these people. They called them wild men. Let's look at the definition. Online etymology dictionary, heathen. Wild men. Old English, heathen, not Christian or Jewish. This is what they try to make you believe, that a heathen is someone who is not Christian or Jewish. Also as a noun, heathen man, one of a race or nation which does not acknowledge the God of the Bible. And then it says especially the Danes. You know, the Danes were the Vikings that came down from the north. They were wild men. They were afraid of them. They came with great slaughter, brothers and sisters. They had no mercy. All you have to do is watch a few of the movies. Watch the Vikings and you see the series. I believe it might be still on Netflix. Maybe, I'm not sure. But watch it and then you can see what we're talking about here. Now, a heathen is a person, a race or nation which does not acknowledge the mighty one of our book. So that means that just about everyone alive today is a heathen, according to this definition, because they don't acknowledge the mighty one of the Bible. When you change the name and replace the mighty one of the Bible with Lord, God, Jesus, Jehovah, and all of the other names that they've created, you're not serving him. So that means that you're considered a heathen. Merged with Old Norse heiden, adjective, heathen, pagan, from Proto-Germanic heithana. Source also of Old Saxon heathen, Old Frisian heathen, Dutch heiden, Old High German heiden, German heiden, which is of uncertain origin. No, it's not. Because you're going to tell us the origin in the next paragraph. But as you see, this word is circulated with all of the European nations. It has nothing to do with those who came from sub-Saharan Africa. Perhaps, literally, dweller on the heath. One inhabiting uncultivated land, see heath plus N. Historically, assumed to be ultimately from Gothic, hypno, Gentile, heathen woman, used by Ulfilas in the first translation of the Bible into a Germanic language as Mark chapter 7, verse 26 for Greek. Listen, they're telling you. They translated our book into their languages. They made it coincide with their gods. They took out our mighty one's name and replaced it with their God's name. Like other basic words for exclusively Christian ideas such as church. Do you see what they're saying? Church is a Christian idea because it can't be found in your book. It doesn't exist. The word that they replace with church is ecclesia, which means the called out ones, which points you back to the children of Yasharal. It should not be in the book. Why did they do this? Because they work for someone else. They do not acknowledge Yahuwah. They're working for someone else. Europeans now are just starting to gravitate towards Yahuwah during this awakening period. It likely would have come first into Gothic and then spread to other Germanic languages. If so, it could be a noun use of an unrelated Gothic adjective. Compare Gothic, high P, dwelling on the heath, but a religious sense is not recorded for this. Do you understand? This has nothing to do with religion. This has to do with a people. Whether native or Gothic, it might have been chosen on model of Latin paganus, with its root sense of rural, see pagan, but that word appears relatively late in the religious sense. Are any of us related to pagans? Let's see. Do you celebrate Christmas? Because Christmas has to do with the heath, the trees, cutting down the tree out of the wood in the forest, ancient Teutonic worship, bringing it in your house, setting it up so it'll stand straight up and decking it with silver and gold. Jeremiah chapter 10, read it for yourself. The Father says, do not do as these heathen do. Or the Germanic word might have been chosen for its resemblance to Greek ethne, see Gentile. Or it may be a literal borrowing of that Greek word, perhaps via Armenian heathanos. Sophus Buktan, 2005, presents another theory. What theory is that? It is most probable that the GMC word hypana referred to a person living on the heath. In other words, on common land. In other words, a person of one's own community. It would then be a neutral word used by heathen people in order to refer to each other rather than a Christian. Negative word denoting non-Christians. So you see, brothers and sisters, a heathen person has nothing to do with us, has to do with them, those who dwelled in the heaths, in the woods, and in the forests. So here we have another depiction in this early time during the time when the Moors ruled Europe of the people crowning the heathen, those who dwelt in the woods and the forests. Look how hairy he is. Do you think that they just created this just out of the imaginations of their own mind? Remember, all of the things that they call myth is rooted in fact. Look at the little heathen. See the little boy there? Hairy, just like his father? Yes, you do. You take directly after your father. Here's another picture of the heathen, those who dwell in heaths, the woods and forests. This is their ruling class. What is it that they have in their hands? Clubs. In the Darwinian chart, the fifth person had a club in his hand, didn't he? Is there a connection to the Darwinian chart and, the heathen here depicted in this portrait? They even have the little figurines in gold with the club. All right, let's see if we can make a connection. DNA evidence has proven that they exist. They call them wild men. They call them Neanderthals. They call them the other humans. And the Bible speaks of them as a totally different race, of the seed of the serpent. Genetic manipulation. Why we say genetic manipulation? Because we learned that they evolved from what they call a monkey. This is their words. They teach it in school. We have no connection to the monkey. But they do. And they make that claim. It's in their books. They won't allow you to preach creation in their schools. Do you know why? It does not apply to them. It applies to you, Israelites, Yisraelites. but evolution applies to them. That's why they were always looking for this missing link. Who was the missing link that we learned? The black woman. Her mitochondrial DNA has been found in everyone who is in Europe. What is absent? The paternal DNA. What does the paternal DNA dictate? Who you are, your legacy, your bloodline, where you come from. They're the other humans. So it's proven that they all dwelled in Europe. It's proven that 2% of their DNA, and everyone says, if you go online and you study for yourself, you'll see that they say a small amount of Neanderthal DNA. Brothers and sisters, 2% is so huge that it makes you a totally different species altogether. Because 0.1% makes you different from everyone else on the planet. 0.1% is 1/10 of a percentage point. So if you have 2 percentage points, that's 20%. Do you understand? That is huge for the change in genome. That's why they look different. That's why they act different. That's why they are different. The only connection that they have to the children of Adam is through the woman. ConstantContact.com, the red-headed giants. Now, I went to multiple websites just to check on this so-called myth, just to make sure that it's true. Remember, we have to find 2 or 3 witnesses to establish truth, correct? All right. In short, there was a legend called the Paiutes myth, stating there were battles between American Indian people and a vicious, ferocious race of evil, cannibalistic giants who were living near the area, who were killing American Indians for food. What color was their hair? Red. We know red is what? A mutation. Did white skin follow? In time, the American Indian tribes, chiefs, and warriors finally joined together to destroy the wicked giants, trapping them in a cave and then setting on fire the entrance. Intriguing Paiutes myth have since turned out to be true. Over time, a cave known as Lovelock Cave in Lovelock, Nevada, United States, and other caves and a lake bed unearthed by archaeologists discovered in a cave under tons of remains of birds and bats' guano or manure, the remains of giants and skeletons believed to have been as tall as 12 feet, with sandals remarkably large, over 15 inches, 38 centimeters in length, which was on view at Nevada Historical Society's museum in Reno in 1952. Here they are. They're not on display anymore. This is all that is left. They're in a back room, locked up in a closet. No one can view it. Do you know how I discovered this? I was watching Ancient Aliens. When I was watching Ancient Aliens, they went to this Nevada museum just to view these skulls. And I was intrigued. I thought they said they didn't have any of these bones, but they have these. The people who are in charge of this cover-up didn't collect these. I want you to listen to this. The legacy of Powell and Boaz, you can look up these people, handed down to the rest of us, ensured that our archaeological evidence could never undergo proper scientific testing lest it upset the apple chart. Why don't they want it to be tested? It'll be just like the Neanderthal. They'll find out that these giants are related to them. These days, cold, hard, clinical facts are not the preferred route to the formulation of theory. So even if you're formulating theory, you need to have some facts, right? But they're saying they have been dismissed. But the social implications of the evidence have to be weighed in the balance before it can enter the public arena. Who's weighing this evidence? Everything is stringently controlled, and history must comply to a preconceived and pre-written script. Do you think that it's a stretch that he's saying this about these redhead giants? Look at what the Europeans have done to the history of the blackamoors. Who is the ones who are stringently controlling history? That they have to comply with their preconceived and pre-written script, white supremacy. Who's doing that? The people who are in control today. Tight terms of reference disallow history to drift outside of set perimeters. And everything in upper academia has to be peer reviewed to make sure potential fringe dwellers and mavericks don't threaten the acceptable paradigm. Do you know a fringe dweller and a maverick? He's talking to you right now. They don't want people like me to get a hold of it, so they call me a fringe dweller or a maverick. What paradigm would I upset? White supremacy. It would show that they are truly the other humans that came from a different bloodline. And if you believe in the Bible or in the book tells you that that bloodline had giants. We have fully documented, reliable accounts of Smithsonian Institute personnel traveling to the 1800s communities in Middle America to take possession of large skeletons exhumed from the mounds. Listen, this cover-up has been, they're saying 1800. This cover-up has been going on this long. They knew who they were all the way back then, brothers and sisters. We're just discovering it now. What is it? 200 years later? 220 years later? We're just discovering who they are? They did a great job of covering up this truth. I was speaking on the comment board to Brother Dash, and we were not trying to give Satan, big him up and give him really his just due, because he has deceived the whole world. All of these cover-ups is through his instructions to his people. You can't let this be known, because if you let this be known to the people, you will lose your power. So they say, hey, we're going to cover it up. They go around the world collecting giant skeletons and artifacts that shows who they are. In certain instances, the handover of remains and artifacts was done with a degree of formal ceremony, with the town mayor, local minister, or assorted dignitaries turning out, and the spectacle of speeches and handshakes reported in the local newspaper. So look for it in the newspaper. Mound researchers like Patricia Mason of Newark, Ohio, in following up on these many reports, have applied to the Smithsonian Institute for information related to present-day whereabouts of those skeletons gifted to the museum's collection, only to be told that the Smithsonian never received any such item. Okay, so the skeletons came in. They never documented it into their inventory. 200 years later, Patricia Mason goes and asks to see these skeletons. And what do they say? We never received any such item. Why? Because it was never documented in the first place, and only those who are at the highest levels know about it. In many other recorded instances, the large bone and heavy skull remains found in the mounds were so old that they disintegrated quite quickly after being exposed to air within a few days, had crumbled to powder. This clearly shows that some of the remains were of very great age. In Egypt, they pulled out mummified remains that was about 4,000, 5,000 years old. Let's say 5,000 years old. And as soon as they brought it to air, it crumbled. So this tells you something. If you still have bones and remains, it's not that old, is it? Maybe a few hundred years old. But we're not talking thousands. Have they been lying to us again with their time frame? What do they say, 60,000, 80,000 years ago? This is why they have to collect them and cover it up. It will upset the apple chart. Yeah. It'll destroy the lives that they've created. Look at one of the jawbones that is in the museum that's in the back room in the closet. Look at it being compared to a modern human jawbone. See the white one on the bottom? You can get an idea of how big these guys were. One grave male, 7 feet, approximately 6 fingers, 6 toes, is right, but the teeth were like human, except they had no canines. Eye, teeth, and extra large molars and incisors. The skull was large, heavy jaw, and long, large cranium, large eye sockets. Finger, bones, extra long, but small hands, buried with beautiful pottery and baskets of fine weave, never seen anything similar. A necklace of fiber and feathers. He looked rather fresh for 6,000 years old. You see that? See, the Smithsonian said that they were 6,000 years old. But the person who saw it says they look mighty fresh for 6,000 years old. As the Smith or Smithsonian people claimed, clean bones, but not brittle. The Smithsonian is said to have a huge warehouse underground in New York City with thousands of skeletons, objects, and informations. This is a major cover-up. Just like the Blackamoors were covered up in plain sight, they're covering this up in plain sight. But look at the time, 6,000 years old, they try to say the giant was. The Paiute Indians and the other tribes, and we're not talking about a long time ago, we're talking maybe a few hundred years ago. They were battling these people. These people were savage. They were cruel. They were eating man flesh, and they were drinking the blood. Enoch, chapter 7, verse 1 to 6. Verse 1. And all the others together with them took unto themselves wives. Who are they talking about? The fallen ones. And each chose for himself one, and he began to go in unto them and defiled themselves with them. Once a fallen one goes into the womb of a woman, they are defiled. Ladies, we're talking about the melanated ladies, us, who were brought here in ships. If a European goes into your womb, you have been defiled. Verse 2. And they taught them charms and enchantments, and the cutting of roots, and made them acquainted with plants. Verse 3. And they became pregnant, and they bare great giants, whose height was 3,000 ells. Verse 4. Who consumed all the acquisition of men. And when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against, verse 5, them, and devoured mankind. And they began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles, and verse 6, and fish, and to devour one another's flesh and drink the blood. Then the earth laid accusation against the lawless ones. What came next after this? Yahuwah destroyed them. How did he do so? With the flood. But they came back again after the flood also. But look at how these great giants behaved. When men couldn't feed them anymore, they ate the men. What did the Paiute Indians say? They were hunting men for food. And when men learned how to get out of their way, and they couldn't find men anymore to eat them, what did they do? They devoured one another's flesh. Cannibals. Do you understand? They tried to say that Africans, we were cannibals. You have cannibalistic tribes in Africa. There's never been any proof of that. But the Bible speaks about another group of people who were cannibalistic. And we can connect them to who? The other humans. Because they have a different bloodline. They're not from the bloodline of those who are from sub-Saharan Africa, which they themselves has said that we are the first humans that are on this planet. So if you think that this was folklore, it's true. The Europeans did not have cameras in those days, so they used art to portray their thoughts, their religions, their beliefs. Look at this belief. Saturn devouring his son. So Saturn was a giant. Remember, Saturnalia, Saturday is all related to the god Saturn, who was a giant. He was a titan. He ate his children because he didn't want anyone else to take his place. You see this in Clash of the Titans, Part 1 and Part 2. You can see how they portray the story. Brothers and sisters, they've been telling us all of these things. They've been showing us their movies. And they told us it was Greek mythology. But remember, this so-called mythology is rooted in fact. Peter Paul Rubens, more Baroque style Saturn devouring his son, 1636, may have inspired Goya. Who has this in their history? It's not in African history. It's not in Israelite history that we had some god named Saturn who ate their sons. This is European history. And they've painted portraits about this event. Giant skeleton found in Bulgaria. Who were these giants? Now they'll say that, oh, this was photoshopped. It's not real. They're finding these artifacts all over the world. The Smithsonian will come in and grab it. Then they'll send their people out who will go online and try to debunk it and says, oh, no, this is not real. It was photoshopped. And they'll make up all kinds of alternative facts. Forked speech, lies, to cover this up. You can get an idea of how big this giant was. Look, compare the head of the first person closest to the giant head. You can see the giant head, his jaw alone is the size of a regular man's head. Another giant skeleton found in Bulgaria, which is estimated about 6,500 years old. Who's giving these estimates? Can we trust their dating system. We already found how flawed their BC-AD dating system is, right? It is to be noted that these giant skeletons have been excavated by archaeologists throughout the planet. And that's true. Though this is an exciting find, it is not uncommon. The authorities tend to keep it as a secret due to some unknown reasons. Because we are totally awake now, we know what the reasons are. If they take the DNA from these bones, they will find that these giants are related to the Europeans and to the Asians. They can't let this out. Hold on 1 second. Am I speaking some kind of conspiracy theory? Did they not cover up the blackamoors that ruled Europe for 800 years? If they can cover up a rule for 800 years in plain sight, why can't they cover up something like this? This is easy for them. Even though some skeletons with photographs serve as a good proof that these giants are real and used to walk on this planet with human beings thousands of years ago, concreting this fact is found in the texts of ancient Greek, Roman, and Indian. Hey, we know about Greek mythology. We've been there. Roman mythology. We've been there. And we find that the Paiute Indians and the rest of the tribes joined together to destroy these giants that were eating them. In their ancient books, in our ancient book, the book of Enoch, it tells you the same thing. There is a clear mention of giants who were very tall and strong. Some of the giant Greek gods were called as titans. So that's where you get your Zeus and Prometheus and, all of these gods, Hercules from ancient mythology. We have a problem today. And the problem is that once you show these things, these facts, people scrutinize it and they say, oh, that's not true, it's not real. Even though I can show you account after account after account after account, but I won't do so. You go check it out. See if it's true. But what I'm showing you here is that our enemy is a master at covering these things up. They knew they were related to the cavemen or the Neanderthals or the other humans. They knew that. We didn't. That's why they came out with that chart. They just didn't realize how they came on to the human stage, the missing link as they called it. Now they know. How do we know? DNA evidence. The woman from sub-Saharan Africa is how they make their link to Adam. This is what they do. And we need to stop chasing after the things of this world and start discovering all of these lies. Do you know that when I witness in the streets to people, I can bring this out. I can use this as a catalyst to awaken our people. And that's what I do. I'm pretty much proficient in it now. I can explain DNA evidence, Y chromosome, mitochondrial DNA, and so on and so forth. And then I can show them that they have been covering up history for so long. It's just incredible how a people can be this wicked. And they don't care that it's affecting everyone. They don't care that it's affecting their own people. You see, there's a ruling class, a serpent class, the enlightened ones. They call them the Illuminati or whatever. But there's a ruling class. They are the serpent class that is responsible to cover up all of these things. And if you think that I'm one of these conspiracy theorists, I'm not. I deal with the book and I deal with facts. Now let me show you a fact that will prove to you that the Europeans, they cover up everything. Queen Europa. I'm going to leave this up to you. Go in yourself and study this and see. Look at her name. Europa. Did you know that Europe was named after this black woman or this woman of color? She's absolutely gorgeous. Look at her features. It is incredible how beautiful this woman is. My wife was just saying, man, her skin color and her lips and her features are just perfect. This is the person that Europe was named after. Now, if you didn't know this, why? Because there's a massive cover-up. The whole continent of Europe named after a black woman? Is this a stretch? Go read this history for yourself. Continue to part 10. Shalom.